Hello, my name is Leanna Dela Cruz, and I am in Mrs. Williams' Period 1 Geography class, and I will be presenting Ancient Japan. I hope you enjoy. Geography and Early Japan. How did geography shape life in Japan? Japan is a group of islands that are separated from other countries. Most of the islands have mountains which cover most of Japan. Since only 20% of Japan has flat land, people had to live near the ocean. As a result of living near the ocean, people had to fish for their food. The Japanese ate many types of seafood such as eel, octopus, seaweed, and shark. Why was the early Japanese society organized in clans? One of the first cultures that developed in Japan was the Ainu. Some think that they came from Siberia or eastern Russia. They spoke in an unusual language that didn't come from Eastern Asia. Japan was influenced by China and Korea. Japan is a mix of Chinese and Korean cultures. Prince Shotoku, one of Japan's greatest leaders, loved the Chinese culture and wanted to bring it into Japan. Since Japan did not have a written language, they wrote in Chinese. Clans. Clans are extended families that lived in small farming villages. Everybody had to respect the members of the clans. Each clan had a chief and were believed to be descendants from spirits called kami. Shinto. Shinto is the traditional religion in Japan. Shintoists believe that everything in nature has kami and will prevent people from harm and help them live. Prince Shotoku. Prince Shotoku was one of Japan's greatest leaders and was a regent who loved the Chinese culture. He wanted to bring many ideas from China to Japan. He helped rule Japan at the age of 20. Regent. A regent is a person who rules a country for somebody who is unable to rule. Prince Shotoku was a regent from 593 to 621 for his aunt the Empress. When Prince Shotoku was a regent, he wanted to adopt more ideas from China. Art and culture in Heian. Court. The court lived separate from the poor citizens, which was a privilege to them. The women of the court loved beauty and elegance, which leads to the fashion of early Japan. Fashion in early Japan. Nobles usually wore silk robes, dresses, and gold jewelry. Some silk dresses had about 12 layers of multicolored silk to show off the colors of the layers. Nobles always carried delicate and decorative fans that were usually painted with trees, birds, and flowers. Literature in early Japan. Writing was very popular to the nobles, especially the women. Many women wrote diaries about their lives in the court. Men usually wrote in Chinese, while women wrote in Japanese. Lady Murasaki Shikibu. Lady Murasaki Shikibu was one of the greatest writers in early Japan. She wrote The Tale of Ganji, which was one of Japan's greatest novels and was written in the early 11th century. Paintings in early Japan. Nobles loved to paint in bright and bold colors. Paintings are used to illustrate stories, for example, being in court or somebody writing calligraphy. Artists painted on furniture such as doors rather than paper. Calligraphy. Calligraphers in Japan spend many hours copying poems to look as beautiful and elegant as they sounded. Architecture. The Japanese loved Chinese architecture, so they modeled Heian like China's capital Chang'an. Most of the houses were made of wood and had large tilted roofs. They surrounded their houses with gardens and ponds. Performing arts. Performing arts is very popular in Japan. The best plays were when the actors mimicked other people. In the 1300s, no plays were created and it combined music, speaking, and dance. Some other performing arts are musicians, acrobats, and jugglers. How did Buddhism change in Japan? Since common people didn't have enough money to make rituals, there were different forms of Buddhism made. For example, Pure Land Buddhism and Zen. Each form of Buddhism has a different way of making rituals. Some cost money to make rituals, but some don't. Zen. Zen is a popular form of Buddhism that arrived in the 1100s. It is the belief that good behavior or good faith does not lead to wisdom. Instead, they seek the wisdom and practice self-discipline. The growth of a military society. How did samurais and shoguns take over Japan? As powerful nobles fought over land, they destroyed it and made it very hard to grow food. Japanese rulers did not notice any of the problems going in Japan because they were focused on courtly life. Daimyo. Daimyo were Japan's landowners. They needed to protect their land since it was getting ruined by the fights. As a result, they hired samurai to defend the property. Samurai. Samurais are trained professional warriors that fight for themselves and their property. Samurais wore light armor and usually fought with bows and swords. Every samurai, from the weakest to the most powerful, had to serve their lord. Shoguns. A shogun is a general who ruled Japan in the emperor's name. The Minamoto leader took the title of shogun in 1192. After he died, it was passed on for 700 years. How did the samurai warriors live honorably? Samurais were highly respected in Japan. As a result of doing many things, they also had restrictions. For example, they couldn't trade or attend types of entertainment such as theater. Bushido. Bushido is the samurai code of rules that the samurai had to follow. Both the men and women of the family had to follow these strict rules. Both were taught how to fight, but men only went to war. Women were taught to fight so they can defend themselves and their homes from robbers. How does the order break down? Shoguns kept order in Japan for about a century, until many challenges came their way. The Mongols from China was one of their greatest challenges. A storm called Kamikaze sank most of Mongol ships and were forced to flee. How did the strong leaders take over? In the 1500s, soldiers wanted more power, so they fought to gain control. The first ruler was Oda Nobunaga. He easily defeated his opponents. After he died, many soldiers again fought to gain control. In 1600, Tokugawa Ieyasu conquered. In 1603, he was shogun. His capital Edo, which is now Tokyo, ruled all of Japan. I hope you enjoyed this presentation and thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed